This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski,
featuring former FBI Special Agent and Chief of the Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program, Robin Dreeke.
Chad Daybell in trial in court, and now going to be explaining his side of the story, which so many of us have been waiting for so long to hear, especially the families of the victims. Larry and Kay Woodcock, I know they're watching, and I know Larry describing this as all business, saying we loved Lori, while she was being the kind of normal Lori. But with Chad, it's all business. So we're going to see what happens now in this case. Luckily, we had a little bit of a preview late last year in a filing from John Pryor, his attorney, that basically stated, most of this is Lori's fault, and Chad was just going along for the ride. We'll see how well that plays out. Joining me to discuss, Robin Dreeke, retired FBI special agent. So yeah, now as the arguments are underway, how well do you think that will play out?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to what people say about him. I think no one stood up and said, hey, Lori's a great person. And I think that's a large reason, besides the overwhelming evidence against her. But, there was no one from Lori's past or history that stood up and said, man, she's such a loving person. This is such an outlier event in her life. The only thing that I think can help Chad is if he has someone or numerous people like that. He's got to be able to paint this picture of a victim of a grand manipulator and cult leader in Lori. And we've been hypothesizing that might be the only possibility he has of not going for the death sentence. But outside of that, I think he's done.
Does it help him or hurt him that Alex Cox is dead? Alex Cox, of course, the brother of Lori Vallow, who also implicated in all of this, but he died shortly after all of this started going down. Somewhat mysterious circumstances. No one's been charged in that death yet. But he could have been the only other person that could have corroborated his story and maybe backed him up a little bit. But would that have helped, having another person going, yeah, we're just doing whatever his wife and my sister are saying? Or is it better that he's not around to do that?
Yeah, like you said, it could go either way on that. If they can throw him under the bus as well, not throw him under the bus, but just say that, throw Lori under the bus for his death in some way, insinuation, because, she hasn't been charged with that murder or his disappearance or his death in any way. But, I think just throwing him as more collateral damage in her chaotic manipulative world is a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And that, Chad was lucky to come out of it not worse off than he was. His children didn't survive. See what I mean? If they start painting that picture of he was really the lone survivor of this chaotic world that she created, that'd be an interesting play. Not very good play when you actually have all the text messages and everything else in the world that says, no, you were all over it. But it'll be really interesting because Lori refused to throw Chad under the bus. It'll be interesting to see if Chad throws Lori under the bus.
I don't know that he much has an opportunity not to, or has a choice not to, if he wants any chance of eluding the death penalty. It's very childish arguments when you break it all down from the defense of Chad Daybell of, well, she made me do it. And one of the other defenses is basically, well, this isn't fair. That's not fair. How many times do, kids say that? But they're basically saying this isn't fair. The motion cites constitutional grounds, arguing that imposing the death penalty on Chad, while his co-defendant, Lori, deemed a little more culpable, which the state really did paint the picture of her kind of being the ringleader, escapes the punishment. They're saying that's unconstitutional and excessive. If you look at it on its merits, it isn't fair. But it's two individual trials as well. And just because you look at one trial over here, it happened this way, and another one happened that way, we're not necessarily looking at each case going, this sets precedent for anything. They're each individual charges and each thing that they're looking at. So is the I'm not fair argument strong enough to stand up to at least spare him the death penalty?
Maybe. I mean, you would think it would in a reasonable world in court, but I honestly don't know. So, because I'm not quite familiar with who would actually determine that, if the judge determines that or a jury would determine that. Because if the jury's determining it, I think he's got a lot more chance of eluding the death penalty, just because it's not law. It's going to be their perception of him being the idiot moron that went along with the charismatic cult leader that carved a path of destruction in her wake. And he was just another victim of that, culpable victim, but still a victim of that. And if they can paint any kind of slight sympathy, not because he's a sympathetic character, just because he's so pathetic. Yeah. I think that's what they're going to be playing for here, is that he is just such a pathetic character that if she's not put to death, why would this pathetic character be put to death?
Well, and you have to look at the merits of why she didn't get the death penalty. It was a technicality. Like, it was taken off the table right away. I could be wrong on this. I don't have it in front of me, but I'll use like a filing deadline. It was a technicality on the part of her attorneys that they had messed something up. And then the court said, because you were kind of messing up on this, we're going to take that off. This isn't even going to be part of the penalty anymore. So it wasn't based on the merits of like, well, there's some questionable doubt here that maybe we should remove it. It was on a technicality. Otherwise, she could have very easily gotten the death penalty. So because of that technicality in her trial, because of her attorneys, should it be taken off the table for Chad?
Complicated, isn't it?
Yeah.
My gosh.
It's like, well, you got a cookie over here. We ran out of them over there. It's like it's because that classroom had the cookies and your teacher ran out. That doesn't mean that, it's fair all around, and we need to honor that, in both places.
Again, when things get really complicated, I try to get really simple. I would go back to the families. The only surviving victims of this, and ask, and really kind of see where they're at on it. Yeah. And, because they're the ones that are trying to be made whole, and they never will be made whole from this, but the Woodcocks, that's they're who really matters now in this. He's going to either get the death penalty or be put away forever, just like Lori. There's no doubt. So it's just a matter of what will allow them to be able to start moving through their pain and trauma and start their healing process.
I think the only way Chad sees the light of day again is if the world ends and they end up becoming the rulers of the world from Rexburg, Idaho. There's always that chance.
And the only thing that is horrible that with them not being put to death is they maintain that crazy hope in their head too. Yeah. They think that. And
I imagine they'll gain some followers behind bars, everybody waiting for the pearly gates of Rexburg.
Guaranteed. They're going to be validated behind bars from a cult following of crazy. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Makes you wonder if there'll be another chapter to this in some way, shape, or form. Maybe. Let's hope not. Let's just hope we never hear their names ever again.
Let's hope not.
Want to listen ad-free? Want advanced access to all of our interviews before anyone else?
Become a True Crime Today Premium Plus subscriber on Apple Podcasts.
You get every episode commercial-free.
So you can binge on true crime
until you can binge no more.
Search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts now, or go to our podcast page and sign up now.
More of the Hidden Killers podcast next.